Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep the Mining podcast. And we have a returning guest who's been on twice before, which was back in May 2020, episode 78, and also again in August 2021. So just under a year ago, which was episode 162. So if you want to rewind back to those episodes to listen, and obviously we've got Michael Konnert, who's the CEO and founder of Vizsla Silver Corp. So if you want to go back and listen to some of those episodes, I encourage you to. So obviously Vizsla Silver Corp is a junior mining company exploring and developing and acquiring precious and base metal assets in Mexico. And Michael's a young entrepreneur and business person who founded a number of companies and also cemented himself as a mining executive with a bright and prosperous future ahead of him. And we're going to talk about some of the companies that he's involved in, as well as obviously getting an update on Vizsla Silver, and also talking about, I suppose, the mining market and obviously the base and precious metals, and also probably the financial markets as well, around, I suppose, monetization and money. So that's welcome, Michael, to the podcast. How you doing, Michael?
Well, thank you, Rob. It's always a pleasure to be on the show, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, appreciate again your time as well. So I wonder if you can just give us a very brief overview of yourself for those that haven't listened to those previous episodes, just so any new people that are listening can, I suppose, know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO of Vizsla Silver, and Vizsla Silver is probably the most exciting silver exploration company in the world right now. So we've consolidated a very high grade silver district in Mexico, and we're continuing to make very high grade discoveries and grow a very large resource as well too. So Vizsla Silver is my main job, founder and CEO there. But I also wear another hat, and that's I'm the managing director and co-founder of Inventa Capital. And you interviewed my colleague Craig Perry, recently, and so Craig and I are the founding partners of Inventa Capital, and we incubate and invest in both natural resources and alternative energy around the world through Inventa Capital.
So just wanted to give us an update on Vizsla Silver. Obviously we were speaking probably 9 months ago, 8 or 9 months ago, or probably a little bit less than that. I wanted to give us an update on the company and what you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, since late summer of last year, the company has achieved a number of milestones. Probably the largest of which is the maiden resource that we put out. Basically, in 18 months of drilling at Napoleon at the project from discovery, we were able to put out over 106 million ounces of combined indicated and inferred resources at the project, silver equivalent, at a grade of about 348 grams silver equivalent. Really quite a sizable deposit there. And, I should say that about 60% of that resource was in the indicated category as well. But this project is just continuing to grow. For a company to put out a resource of that size in that amount of time, really is quite exciting. So, over those months since we last spoke, we've continued to grow. We've continued to grow the resource. We've continued to grow our pipeline of discoveries in Mexico as well. And we're moving very, very rapidly towards creating a very large scale silver producer here at our Panuco district. So, that means de-risking the project through environmental studies, through all the work that needs to go into economic assessments and studies to move forward. But really, this year, going forward is all about drilling. And so just this morning, we announced a new discovery of an additional vein in the Tajitos Copala area of the district. And it's very high grade. It was over 2.5 meters of 3,500 grams silver equivalent. Some extreme high grade there. So the company and the project continues to provide upside and exciting news flow, and I don't think that'll change this year. It'll be a very busy year for drilling, and really quite excited about how that looks.
Yeah, and have you got sort of time frames around over the obviously next few years as you go through obviously the mining process to production?
The next few steps here, the next major catalyst for us is to upgrade the resource, update the resource in probably the second half of this year here towards the end of the year. I'm expecting a relatively significant increase in the overall size there. And, after that, going into 2023, I could see that the company would put an updated resource together from that second update, and possibly include economics around that. We've been doing our own internal scoping studies on how we move this into production. And, the project features a huge amount of infrastructure, production infrastructure. And that even includes an old past producing mill that we bought as part of the transaction, power lines, roads. There's 35 kilometers of underground workings there. It's really a brownfields district in the sense, and we bought all of the production infrastructure there. So it's really, quite impressive, both on the scale and then the capacity for the district to move into production. So, I would expect that, the company could move very rapidly from the point of putting out economics into production. And internally, our goal is to become a large scale producer. Our internal goal is 12 million ounces per annum at the project, and of equivalent. And I think this is something that the project has the scope to do.
Okay, so you've got obviously, by doing exploration in and around where that actual asset is, you feel that you've got 12 million ounces, or would you be looking at other assets and resources in other jurisdictions to meet that target?
Well, I think certainly this district here at Panuco is it's already on a combined equivalent basis over 106 million ounces of silver in our first 18 months of drilling from discovery. I see this I see a very clear pathway for this to be a multi-100 million ounce district. And I think that, from what we're seeing on underground, the potential for underground mines at Napoleon and Tajitos and Copala, we could have multiple phases of mining feeding into something of a, at the end of the day, something that could be a 12 million ounce plus scope of a mine. So certainly we see that at the district itself here. Really if you were another exploration company, a venture resource company, you would be happy with a third of the district that we have, or even less. We have the district so big that we've had to divide it into thirds so that we can, kind of accurately demonstrate it, as well as, explore it efficiently. So, we really almost have multiple projects within one district. And so the west is really where the resource sits right now. We have other discoveries and small resources in the central area. And then the east is kind of our greenfields exploration. So, between all of those components of the project, I'm confident that we'll be able to hit that target with production.
Wonder if you can just highlight some of the other companies that you're involved in. I know you're involved in copper as well, and maybe some base metals. So I just wonder if you can just give us an overview of some of the other companies you're involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as part of Vizsla Silver, we spun out Vizsla Copper, and we're very bullish on copper. I believe copper price is going to rise. I think it's such an important aspect of the world of the future that we're very, very bullish on copper. and that ties into silver as well too. Silver is indispensable, for the electrification of the world as well. So that's our theme at Inventa is kind of the new energy paradigm. So because of that, we have Vizsla Copper as a vehicle for us to acquire and invest in copper projects, explore, and the goal there is to become a large scale producer as well in time. We also have another company called Archer Exploration, which is a nickel company, and we've made an acquisition of a project in Africa for nickel. We love nickel and targeting nickel sulfide deposits as well through that company. And we've also made an investment and have some board representation on a company called Surge Copper, which is exploring for copper and has a large resource base in British Columbia as well. So, we have huge interest in these metals, and I think notwithstanding this recent crash in the market, the future is very, very bright for these metals and these companies.
What challenges are you seeing across obviously the companies that you're involved in, whether it's supply chain, government policies, labor, or even resources? Are you seeing major sort of breakdowns in some of these areas?
We are, in the sense that it's been a bit difficult to get some exploration implements that we were hoping to get across the border into Mexico, specifically for Vizsla Silver. We were hoping to do a airborne survey, electromagnetic survey across the district on the back of some very positive ground electromagnetics that we've done. And unfortunately, some of the groups that we were contracting from Canada really, didn't have the scope or the availability of the material or the tools essentially to conduct that survey for us. So that's one of the the big things there. But this also even just goes down to kind of coming out of the pandemic, and even travel is difficult these days, and long lines at airports, canceled flights. I think we're really not out of the woods yet when it comes to supply chain and even inflation-led shortages and things like that. So it's a new world out there from pre-pandemic, and certainly we've been impacted by that.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the answers to some of these challenges that you're facing around maybe supply chains, resources? Is there, I suppose, a common theme that something needs to change to improve all these challenges?
Well, I think, the answer in all these cases, and I, really believe that entrepreneurship is often the answer to these issues. So, I would love, actually, I'd prefer to contract a Mexican company that could provide the electromagnetic survey in Mexico. And, if I were a person looking for something to do in the mining industry, service-based supply is huge. So, like even, of course, your business with people are in short supply right now. It's very difficult to find good, capable people and fill the roles that are happening. But even labs, there's an opportunity for new assay labs, opportunity for service providers, drill rigs providers. It's really, I suspect it's going to continue to be a very positive time for groups that want to do high quality supply to the mining industry. The opportunity, I think, there is because the industry is seeing just, what would it be, better part of a decade of underinvestment in exploration. Really, the last time that there was a huge amount of money going into exploration was 2011, 2012. So it's been probably a better part of 10 years before the recent increase in exploration spend, and from that, you're seeing assay labs being in high demand. There's still huge delays for assays, and then these service providers, a drill rig, a driller that has the ability to provide other types of exploration support and technology would I think would be quite a successful business right now.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Obviously, being a recruiter, I'm speaking to a number of obviously clients and candidates, and every time I ask them how's business, everyone has been saying they're busy and understaffed, and they're working longer hours. Um, Clients are expecting more, but I wouldn't say necessarily they're expecting more, but the time frames in which they want something is tightening down. Um, because they know there's going to be delays. So yeah, there's certainly opportunities for someone to develop certain services if you've got that entrepreneur mindset and to
Mhm.
start a business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You see that. Um, so what are your thoughts on some of the major, obviously on the major mining shares that have sort of lost 20 and 30% in more recent weeks? What would you say that's sort of mainly down to?
Well, it's unfortunately mining equities are still equities, and despite the inflation hedge that gold and commodities are, which you would suspect would be very positive for the equities in this new paradigm here. These equities get sold off in a flight to liquidity, and so it doesn't really matter what the underlying business is in a market crash. These companies suffer like the other equities, like the S&P 500 composite companies, and many of the other equities around the world that have been selling off. Gold and commodity stocks are the same. Now, I think that creates a huge opportunity, and quite possibly a generational buying opportunity here, because we know that in the last 3 bull markets for commodities, we've seen an initial crash, and then the equities, the commodity, certainly precious metals, and then copper and base metal equities rally oftentimes 5 to 10 times in the after the crash. So this to me is an opportunity. Vizsla was in October and fall of last year was $3.50, and in this last crash year it traded down to as low as $1.45, I believe, and today is trading closer to $2. So there is an opportunity to buy these things on these dips, but I think the value of Vizsla will be far in excess of that previous high in coming years here, even months. But it's these crashes always create an opportunity, and we've seen this before, and the best part about the mining industry is that it's cyclical. So the playbook has already kind of been written, where broader market crashes generally play into commodity and gold stock rallies going forward. So
I saw your recent interview with Joe Ducey, where you were talking about obviously all the money printing. So with that, and obviously with all the debt increasing and inflation, which is sort of slowly building up momentum around the world, what are your thoughts, and what does that mean for silver and gold moving forward?
well, it's interesting because a lot of what's leading into this recent crash that we just discussed here is that so after March of 2020, the markets crashed, and then they were subsequently buoyed up by basically free money that entered the system and went into the checking accounts of people sitting at home who couldn't go to sports games, or were looking for something to do, and it became the national pastime to invest in the stock market. And despite the world closing down, and despite all those issues created around COVID, the stock market saw an incredible rally, and it was basically conducted by free money printing and inflation. And now we're seeing rates rising, and I think the money, at least the stimulus has been stopped, to the direct to the American people and people around the world. So, we're starting to see this crash here, happen, I think, because we're seeing a lot of that liquidity leave the market because interest rates are rising, and a little bit of the stimulus has the direct stimulus has dried up. Now, I think that also creates a huge opportunity for gold, because there's two ways here. One is that the Fed could continue to print money, and they will, and they do that through various different tactics. But they could even go back to that direct stimulus to the population. And if that's the case, that just creates more inflation, and that's very good for gold and silver. But also, if they they stop and this rate, you get the rate hike environment here. That also has been very good for silver and gold in the past as well too. And you can look back to the the 1970s precious metal bull run for an indicator of that. So I think there's really upside no matter what here for these metals. And I don't think I've ever seen, certainly in my career, I've never seen a setup quite like this before. For these metals, but I think this is one of these kind of preludes to an incredible market for these companies, and everything is just on a bigger scale now. The numbers are bigger. 80% of the world's dollars have been printed since 2020. So the scale of all this is so much more massive than it ever has been. I'm kind of thrilled to think about what's going to come here.
Yes, certainly. And with sort of gold below its all-time high, and silver half of its all-time high as well, and severely undervalued, in my opinion. What is the catalyst for precious metals to sort of build up momentum for their prices, obviously, to increase?
Well, I think we'll need to see a little bit more of a crash or more pain in the broader U.S. markets. I think that will have a significant influence on precious metals here, and we're starting to actually see the early sides of that, which is the indications of stagflation in the U.S. This has been a recent record-setting consecutive negative days on the S&P 500. I think it's almost going to break the record from 2001. So this is pretty serious, I suppose, and something that we haven't seen in a long time. But I think there's still more pain to come from the overvalued kind of broad market equities that have been really performing well for the American public and the investing public worldwide. So this type of thing always leads to a rotation into precious metals. And so I think, if there is further pain, we're going to start to see these gold and silver equities kind of bifurcate from the overall equity sell-off, and they'll start to appreciate in value while these other equities go down. And I think that will be that big narrative shift for precious metals, and I think that's coming quite imminently here.
So where do you see ourselves in the cycle at the moment?
Looking back to other cycles, if you remember from 2001, onward to 2008, and then really peaking out at 2011, 2012. I think we're in that early 2001 era here, maybe a few years past that, as we've had some positive price movements in copper and nickel, and we're starting to see some M&A transactions, but it hasn't really been that prevalent across the industry, and it hasn't been at crazy premiums and things like that. So I think we're very early in this cycle. I think what it takes often is there's a couple of things. One is that we haven't seen the inflows into metals and mining funds that you'd expect to be later in the cycle, and we haven't seen any kind of real generalist interest in these equities. And those are both indicators that we're very early. And I was at an institutional conference earlier this week, and there was actually a couple of interesting groups there, but it wasn't the big generalist funds that you see later in the cycle. So I think we're very, very early. I think we might need to kind of take a different approach to it this time, and be clear as a mining industry that we're not junior miners, and we're not polluters or serial polluters. And what we are is really venture capital for resources that are needed for the electric vehicle revolution, for batteries, for technology. I think it's unfortunate because what we are doing, and Inventa, what we're doing is providing the elements that the world needs. That's our mission statement. We do that through exploring and later producing these metals and minerals, as well as other elements like carbon and offsets there. And I think what we really need to do is kind of frame that in a way that appeals to the broader market and the groups that were interested in investing in GameStop and things like that, because it's really quite important that people understand that we're not just digging a deep hole and raping and pillaging the earth. It's really an ESG friendly way of providing the metals that the world needs. And without those, the solar panels don't work, and the Teslas don't drive, and you don't get power to your house, and it's windmills don't turn. It's so crucial, yet so hated still. And I think that'll be key for us moving forward in this new kind of new energy world that we're seeing.
When do you think you'll see these bigger financial institutions that I suppose not necessarily experienced in the mining industry? When do you feel that they will start coming into the industry, and obviously the bigger money coming in?
I think one of the important aspects of that is going to be some of these car companies and downstream users of materials coming in and showing an interest in being involved earlier on in the supply chain. I think that'll actually be a catalyst there. But also, I do think it's just really as a matter. It really has to do with the the prices of the commodities. And once we see gold break all-time high again and move up, and silver move past 30, and copper continue to move up, and nickel is in quite high demand because it's had a drastic price movement. Those price movements often bring in a lot of attention from the generalist investors, and I think that could be a year out, it could be sooner, and it could could potentially be a little bit longer. But I do know that it's coming because it's in essence it's an inevitability.
What does it mean to be referred to as a mining millennial?
Yeah, no, that's good question, and it's something that I think what we the way that we look at that is that it's bringing a different approach to how we manage companies, and how we bring kind of alignment and ESG into focus for our companies. And that's not to say, and I made this argument before in other interviews, I think it's kind of funny that ESG is becoming so much more topical across all these different companies, because it's something that mining has always had to do. It's always had to work with communities, and without community buy-in and alignment with communities, it's very difficult to operate a mine. And I could probably count a handful of different operations that are excellent mines, even just in BC, that haven't been built because of poor communication and poor alignment with community groups in affected areas. So from my perspective, the mining millennial title, I think, is just taking another approach at how do we find and provide the elements that the world needs in a way that fits in this worldview and this era and time here. So it's it's alignment with communities. It's also how we operate and manage our companies as well too. It's a little different than years past, I would say.
Yeah. Do you? And I've just thought of something. Do you think the emphasis on ESG, and obviously there is a lot of talk around the mining industry and a focus on ESG. Do you think that is because they want to improve the branding of the mining industry to the greater to the world, basically? So if they're going to keep talking about ESG and how sustainable and obviously governance and everything that's involved in ESG, is that to give the mining industry a better image and branding for people outside of the industry if it's always been spoken about?
Yeah, I think that's really important because I've had these interesting conversations with with young people that are 19, 20 years old, 18 years old, that are leaving high school and going to university and maybe just haven't had a lot of, I guess, real world experience in industry or in the careers yet. And they don't, even if we talk about ESG and what we're doing is good for the community, and what we're doing is it's good for the the environments in which we work in, and we're providing metal that's so important for even just the lifestyle infrastructure that these people enjoy. They still hate it. It's still a hated industry. They think that we're destroying the earth, digging holes and killing the environment there. But there is a huge disconnect between what the luxury, not even the luxuries, just the basics that the world enjoys because of metals and minerals, and then the need to bring on new mines in order to meet the supply that's created by that growth of those basics. So ESG, I think, is going to be an important way to communicate what we've already been doing, which is those shared values and creating the elements that the world needs. But I think we need to do a job as a mining industry to communicate that across the to the mainstream and the secular audiences, which I think is something that we're missing right now.
And lastly, what's the outlook for Vizsla for the rest of this year, going into next year, and also the outlook for Michael as well?
Yeah, well, Vizsla, we're going to continue to drill, and we've got the largest exploration program in the world for silver right now at our Panuco district. So it's going to be continued drill discoveries and resource updates, and as I said, moving all those pieces of information that the drilling gives us, moving that into a resource, which will then progress into a mine plan and eventually large scale production of silver at the Panuco project. But before that, it's just going to be continued steady stream of positive news from the project and exploration. And then for myself, it's continuing to help build and incubate the companies under the Inventa portfolio, and incubating great entrepreneurs and great ideas through that company.
Yeah, well, I know you're a busy person, so wish you well for the rest of the year, and really appreciate your time in sharing your give us an update on Vizsla, and also obviously your thoughts around topics like ESG that we've just spoken about. And I know you're always thinking up new ideas in which to improve things, and obviously help and mentor others as well. So I know you do a lot of that. So really appreciate your time. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions or want to check out Vizsla, wonder how they go about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're available on Twitter and social media like that, Vizsla Silver Corp, and then Inventa Capital, and then our websites are vizslasilver.ca and inventacapital.ca.
Okay, no worries. Really appreciate your time, Michael. Thanks again. No doubt we'll speak again later this year or beginning part of next year for an update. And for those that are listening, hope you enjoyed this episode. Please keep sharing this episode amongst others in the industry, and also even people that you know outside of the industry, and obviously friends and family. It's good to get others outside of the mining industry just to understand what mining is about, because it isn't. Obviously, it gives. There is a bad image of mining out there being dirty and whatever, but it's not that. So appreciate if you can keep continuing sharing this episode, and obviously your continued support. So until next time, happy mining.